Greetings, welcome to episode 3 of my engineering Oddcast. The topic this time is how to work well with other people in an organisation. Not really on the topic of this episode, but relating to something from the previous episode about distractions. I'm filming this in New York. I'm in an apartment on the 28th floor. I've shut the windows, the AC's off, it's as quiet as I can get it in here. But there's still street noise and there's still going to be sirens and perhaps the sound of garbage truck horns or ship horns on the East River. I can't control for that, and unfortunately, having lived in New York for a while now, I've tuned it out, so I'm almost or basically unaware of when it's happened. So at points during this episode or other episodes, you may hear such noises and think, well, why didn't Phil just do a retake of that sentence? The truth is I didn't notice. And then when editing this, I'm still editing it in New York. There's still noises out from outside and I can't really tell what's on the recording and what's from outside. So we have the same problem that I just don't hear it myself. I apologise that it's distracting. I will do what I can. I'll try some audio filters on this episode and see if I can get rid of that noise some more. But I guess all I'm saying is I'm aware of the problem to some extent, but there's very little I can do about it when what I can do I am now trying to do. And thank you for your patience in living through it. Working well with other people requires a set of skills that are not necessarily closely correlated with being good at software engineering in the abstract engineering sense. I'll begin by stating the fundamental thing, which is to treat your colleagues with respect. That means that you think of them the same as humans with their own agency, with their own problems, with their own personalities, and not as just components of some machine in the way that you would think about a computer system. If you try to model a system of human interactions in the way that you would model a network of computer systems interacting, it will not end well. Many have tried. The models we use for interacting systems or components of software do not map well to interacting humans, at least in the scale of the organisation that you work in. So don't make that mistake of trying to treat things the same way. On that topic specifically, early in my career, I found I was starting to treat some computer systems as though they're humans and anthropomorphize them and talk to them as though they're humans. I find that behavior in myself generally unhelpful, and so I try not to do it. At times when I fail to differentiate the two, I now consciously endeavour to treat the computer system with an exaggerated amount of respect that it isn't due, because I would rather leak being polite into my interactions with the computer than leak being impolite and blunt into my interactions with other people. And the way my personality is, one of those things is going to happen. So all I can do is choose the least harmful one. Because I don't feel I can credibly claim to be an authority on how to be nice to people and how to be a good human, I'm not going to spend any more time on that particular topic. And we're going to move on now to specific concrete strategies you can try that will help you in other ways within an organisation. When you're working in an organisation, you'll be interacting with many other people, and many other people will be interacting with you. That means the amount of time that anyone spends specifically thinking about anyone else is actually pretty low. Most of the time, you're thinking about how you interact with someone else or about the technical work that you're doing. That observation leads me to a couple of behaviours that I think are helpful that I try to do in any organisation where I work. So, first is I like to present a consistent image to everyone I interact with for a long period of time. This means that over the course of many short interactions where people are not thinking particularly carefully about who I am or what I can do, they build up a consistent impression of what it is that Phil is and can do for them, or can do helpfully in this organisation. If I don't present a consistent image and behave in a consistent way, then that effect doesn't happen. It would only be that someone who's paying particular attention to me would find out what it is I can do, and that's just really unlikely. It's not anyone's job to be learning how I am. It's my job to communicate that as effectively as I can. What do I mean by consistency? Well, one very concrete thing is my appearance in person and in the various profile photos that are attached to systems these days. I like those to all be pretty closely correlated. So I essentially look like this. I want my profile picture in the email system to look like this. I want my profile picture in our task assignment system to look like this. I want my profile picture in our source control system to look like this. I want my appearance when I turn up to a meeting with people in real life to look like this. I want when I'm on a VC call with someone essentially to look like this, because people will build a mental association then between someone who looks like this and what it is I can do. If they're just going off my name, that's not as strong an association because of how human minds appear to work, and it also risks you being confused with other people who have the same first or last name. Now, obviously this shouldn't apply to people like your manager and your immediate team. But in general, in order to progress in your career, you're going to have to work with a lot of people who don't work in your immediate vicinity, and helping them get a coherent impression of who you are will help at review times when they're asked, hey, how did this person do? So that's my case for having a coherent, consistent, singular image that you project. I'm not in the position to dictate to you that you shouldn't use a cartoon picture of yourself or an image from some other thing to represent yourself in some of those systems, but I just want you to be aware of the risk you're taking, that people won't associate your work in meetings in person with your work online if you look differently from one to the other. So if you're going to use a image from Calvin and Hobbes as your profile photo, maybe you need to wear a Calvin and Hobbes t-shirt to all your meetings so that that association gets built. The other risk I'll point out with using a image of something else as something other than yourself as your profile photo is you can't really control what that image means to the person who's seeing it. So I saw people with Calvin and Hobbes profile photos for years before I knew what Calvin and Hobbes even was. And so those images to me meant absolutely nothing. I think it's perfectly possible that for someone else who has no idea what Calvin and Hobbes is, that an image of a tiger has a very negative connotation to them. The other thing to think about is what your expression looks like in your profile photo. So I can do quite a big smile and go, hey, and then that works nicely. It creates a positive impression in people's minds when they see it. And if I'm conveying good news or enthusiasm in the message that is associated with that in Slack or Jira or wherever, then that's great. Problem with a big smile in my profile photo is sometimes I have to convey bad news or message that is not positive, like this system is down or whatever. And I don't want people ever to be seeing, hey, this system's down. That's not how it should be. And the same logic applies in reverse to, like, I could look really angry, and then that would not be appropriate for times when my message is neutral or positive. I aim for my profile photo to be a very neutral, relaxed face, like not smiling, not frowning, not scowling, not trying to look inspirational, just what my resting face looks like, which is psychologically quite hard to do because I don't like what my resting face looks like. But at the same time, I have to acknowledge that for someone wandering around the office trying to find me who's only seen my profile photo online, having that is probably much more helpful than anything else, because the odds are I'm not in a state of high enthusiasm or high anger at the point they're looking for me. I'm probably just sat at my desk looking fairly neutral, perhaps thinking about a problem. Coming back to the idea that it's about presenting a consistent image, that means I won't change my profile photo more than about once per year, even if I make changes to my appearance in the meantime. I mean, obviously I will get haircuts. At points in the year I'll have a beard, and at points I won't. That's largely driven in my case by laziness and how cold it is outside. I don't retake and replace all my profile photos when I gain or lose the beard. Arguably I should, if my only motivation is to be recognised in real life coherently with the online presence that I have. But the issue with changing the profile photo very frequently is that you can't build that over time consistent image in people's mind of this person online has this personality. And I have not found that changing my hairstyle or shaving or growing my beard has made a big difference to whether people can recognise me in real life. From time to time, you may end up in the position of leading other people in some project, and that's another area where consistency is very important. When I'm in the position that other people are going to do the work I ask them to do, I try to make sure that in advance of them starting that work, I've made clear as I can what my expectations are for what they need to deliver at the end of it and at milestone points within the project. And then at those milestone points and at the end, I make a point of explicitly checking the things that I asked for. I find that pattern more effective than another strategy I've seen attempted, which is to tell people like the first thing you want, and then when you get to that point go, okay, cool, now we need to do blah. And then at the second checkpoint, okay, cool, now we need to do blah. I suspect which is most effective actually varies depending on who you're giving the work to. But overall, across the balance of people that I've ever directed the work of, I've found it more effective to set the expectations for as much as possible for the complete piece of work up front, and then be very consistent about examining that. It's particularly useful when what you're leading is a project that has many repeated units that are broadly similar. So in that case, you set your clear expectation about what you want for the first of those units or the first batch of those units. You check in at your checkpoints and verify those things. You get to the end of those units, and you again are focusing on those core aspects that you asked for. And then when you progress to the second set of units, everyone's now very confident in you as a leader that what you've asked for is exactly what you're going to check and is exactly what you want. And that means for the second round of things and from then on, you won't have to focus so much time on those things. The people you're directing will have got really good at anticipating that this is what you're going to ask for. And so when they come with the first draft or their first draft of a plan to do something, all of the questions that you asked for already will be preempted if they're good at their job, and most people generally are good at their job if given, clarity. And thus you'll get the whole project done a bit faster. I've not personally attempted the other incremental approach in round one and then tried it in round two, because I've seen other people try that. And what I've observed to happen is what gets internalized amongst the team is from the first round is that you weren't clear about what you wanted, and therefore, and you keep changing your mind or adding requirements. And so we start the second batch of things with the expectation that the leadership will keep changing their mind and asking for new things, not with the expectation that they will want all the things they wanted before and that's it. It takes 3 or 4 iterations to get your team to the point of knowing what it is you want, if you start incrementally, has been my observation, whereas you can get there a bit faster if you are sort of totally clear up front. There'll be a future episode that's a lot more about how to lead larger projects and how to make work for other people to do, and how to draw the lines and how to stop yourself getting bogged down, or the team getting bogged down in things that are unnecessary. I thought about elaborating on that here, but I really think it needs its own episode, so that will be later. Something it's important to do when you're given a project to work on is to understand who all the people who care about the outcome of that project or the way that it's done, who they all are and what it is they care about. What I'm saying is sometimes you would, if you did a project and you didn't talk to this stakeholder in advance, you'd make this technical decision and it will annoy them, and then they'll be annoyed and hate you. And sometimes you do that same project, you do talk to this stakeholder in advance, but the nature of the problem or some reason means you have to make exactly the same technical decision, and they should be as annoyed. Like, if it were a logical universe, you would think that they should be as annoyed with you as they were in the first case. That isn't how it works in the real world. If you have talked to this person in advance and you understand how important that aspect of it is to them, and then you're forced to make the other decision anyway, in their mind it takes it from being your fault that you made this choice because you were willfully ignorant of their needs. It takes it from that to being a kind of feature of the reality of the situation, which doesn't associate the blame onto you, at least most of the time. Of course, the immediate question is how could you possibly know who else cares? Well, part of the answer is that the person who gives you that problem almost certainly knows who some of the other people who care would be. So you should definitely ask them, who are the other stakeholders here, who's interested in this or might have thought about it that I can go and talk to. That's a good question to ask. And then you will usually get 3 or 4 names, write them down, go and meet with those people, ask them what they think about you you should do in order to try and solve this problem, or what they think the shape of the solution needs to be, or even if they think it's already adequately addressed. All of that is interesting information to you. And also you can ask them, right, do you know of anyone else who might care? Typically after the first 3 or 4 people you've spoken to, you start getting the closed list of 7 people or so who have some kind of stake in this project. And then once you've spoken to all of those about it, you're kind of done in the getting the context of what's already been thought about for this. Then you go on to try and solve the problem, but as you think of things, possible shapes of solutions, you now have those same people you can go back to, the ones you think might care the most about the decision you're considering making, and validate it with them. And then at the end of the project, when you've made all the decisions, done all the coding, you know who to go to and say, I know, you can say, here's what I've done, here's where your considerations were specifically taken into account. Here's where I've been forced to do something that you didn't like because of whatever. If you try and do a project without talking to those people who are also stakeholders in it, it just won't work. Not like technically won't work. You may well deliver the solution to the original problem, but it won't work on a social level unless the person who gave you the original problem's already done all that legwork for you and is also going to do the legwork of explaining the outcome to the other stakeholders. Thank you for listening to episode 3. The next episode will be episode 5. I will be talking about how I think about a problem and how I have inferred that other people think about problems, and I hope that's of interest to you. Till then, bye-bye.